Welcome to another podcast episode of Nuggets with Sauce, Thought Leadership for Thoughtful Leaders, presented by me, Michelle Arentz. I have my friend Chason Forehand as my guest. Chason is an amazing human being in so many ways, but I want you, Chason, to kind of give us a quick intro to yourself. And as you know, here on Nuggets with Sauce, we do not use job titles. Who cares? We can call ourselves anything we want. That's hardly the point. True. I'm more interested, and I think our listeners are more interested in knowing, what's your passion or your purpose? I like to dive in by introduce yourself by saying, what fires you up, Chason? What gets you out of bed every day in the good fight?
Well, I appreciate being here. And what fires me up is leaving a legacy of change. And I know that seems like, okay, it's Giving Tuesday today as we're recording this. And I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do today and tomorrow and the next day to actually create change around me? Because actionable change requires a key component, action. So so that's what I'm about. And that's what gets me up.
That's what I love and admire so much about you, Chason, is you really are a guy of ideas and action, and you are absolutely one of the best change agents that I know in this world. So all the more reason that I'm sure this is going to be one of many episodes with you on board. Before we dive into the nuggets that you've brought to share today and the special sauce that goes with, what's a recommended? I think you were going to share a recommended read.
Yeah, I actually have two. These are the last two books. I'm going to hold them up here, but the people that are listening
so Dustin Dale, the daily, what was that? Dustin Dale, the Daily Second Chance, and Top-Down Culture, Revolutionary Leadership to Drive Results. Awesome.
And that's Lindsay Dowd. So the last two books that I read were by Dustin Dale and by Lindsay Dowd. But all this behind me, you can only see part of it. And if you're listening in, you can't see any of it. But I have a bunch of partner books here because we have an amazing group of partners that
we do
just are super talented.
Yeah. So. And those partners are all, of course, tied in very nicely to what you are such an amazing change agent around, which is your nonprofit organization, HR for You, which I am very proud to be a member of.
Yeah.
Which is going to segue us right on into the nuggets and sauce that we're going to get into for today's episode. So let's start by qualifying. It seems to me you were getting pretty serious about the sauciness here. This is please explain your sauce logic, and then we'll start dipping into the nuggets.
Well, I come from a culinary background, so I chose habanero. Habanero is this smoky, spicy flavor. It's so fantastic. Some people say that it has that extended heat where you don't get it at the very beginning, but you get that smoke and heat as it goes on. In the Scoville, so if you're the Scoville heat unit, if you're looking at that and you want to know like how hot is habanero, 100 to 300,000 in the Scoville heat units, which is 75 times hotter than a jalapeno. So we're going to get, but we're not like ghost pepper.
No, we're not ghost pepper.
We're not going to scorch people to where you can't, taste anything any longer.
There's no joy in that. So, we might want to have a glass of milk off to the side to handle some of the here. But this is going to be, I think the nuggets that we're going to, be noshing on today are some pretty, they get you pretty heated, don't they?
Absolutely.
I feel pretty hot and heated about it. So I think habanero is the way to go here in our conversation. So let's just not waste one more second of our time and dive right into these nuggets. So you and I have had, I don't know how many conversations around this, and we posted on LinkedIn and all kinds of things. And I'm, yelling about it all the time. But, really, let's be real, Chason. What chaps your ass and chaps mine too is the whole thing around the inequality and the rigmarole that's going on in this economy right now, where people are just, not getting a living decent wage. Is that fair game? Can I just tee that up and just hit that one right there?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And
That's nugget dunk number one right there.
absolutely, that's dunk number one.
Yeah.
Dunk number two would be that we have a lot of human beings
Mm.
that are starting their companies within no forethought of what happens to the human beings that they bring on board when their ideas go south or their planning is not as good as they thought. And now they have to do something with the human beings that they have. So they hit a button back in their office and terminate people in December so that people can have a wonderful holiday. That's dunk number two.
Damn. Well, and I mean, isn't that just like the shittiest thing on the planet that I mean, I don't know which is worse, probably. Well, I'm going to guess it is probably a little worse to do it before the holidays, but I think it's an equally big backslap to do it right afterwards. Like, oh, got to hit the books or hit the numbers to close out the year.
Yeah.
And it's like the worst. I mean, there's really never a good time to do layoffs, but I mean, that's the worst time to do layoffs.
And then nugget number three is, okay, you've now made this horrible decision that there's no other way to protect your company. And really, when we go back to it, we talk about nugget number two, we're going to talk about how you're protecting that top part of the pyramid, but I digress. Right now, nugget number three, you've now laid off people, you've terminated people, you did all of this wonderful stuff, usually at the latter part of the year, December being the favorite time period. And now you realize you made a mistake and you need some of those critical people and those brilliant minds that instead of you talking with them and engaging with them and caring about them as human beings to help you with the problems so that you didn't have to go through this, now you've laid them off and you want to bring them back.
Oh, and they're so eager to come back to your ass kicking self, aren't they? Oh, I know. I know. Everybody. Oh, yeah, I laid you off.
And we wonder why people
terminated you and your job and your livelihood and all the people that depend on you. And then, yeah, but could you come back in? Yeah. I see the stuff on BuzzFeed. I don't know if anybody else looks at anything on BuzzFeed, but sometimes I just can't handle the real news of the world. And so I look for the pseudo news of the world to try to lighten the load a little bit. And I see this kind of crap happening all the time, like people posting, here's real life texts or stupid things that, dumb bosses have done. And I've seen some stuff in this respect that you're talking about, Chason, which is, I basically told you, here's the door, but then I turned around and said, but I still need you to work. Okay. Like, yeah. Hello. Yeah.
And the sad thing is, and this is really, this, ties into the very first nugget, but the sad thing is that there are more jobs than there are literally people to fill them. And yet we're taking so long to bring people in and make decisions. There are all these people that have been out of work for 6 months or more. And when we get people in and we don't engage with them, we wonder, why is there quiet quitting? And why are people not happy at work? And why is there disengagement? And why do my surveys look the way they do?
People don't even want to work these days. Nobody wants to work. The lazy bums.
I swear, if I actually hear another person that's in a leadership role say that out loud with real intent, like they really believe that, I'm gonna be like, oh, wait, please.
I recently
it's just pseudo reality.
Never name names. I will protect innocence in a manner of speaking. But I did recently hear a business leader say, why can't they just be grateful that we're busy and they have jobs?
And that's a person headed.
I winced when I heard that. And I was like, okay. Now, I understand leaders are frustrated about certain things going on in their business, but then to me, that's the whole opportunity to, as you said earlier, sit down, talk, listen. One of your best resources are your human resources. And no, I don't just mean the department that everybody likes to go and bitch to. I mean, truly, you're human beings. The
Yep.
solution that, first of all, in my world, you might disagree with me on this, Chason, but in my world, I figure all business problems are ultimately people problems. Because if there are no people, there is no business. Look, I'm a solopreneur, and if I don't show up to work, nothing happens. Right?
Yeah.
So whatever's going on, somebody made a decision, whether you as the leader, the boss, the owner, whatever, you made decisions about your people. You made decisions that either set them up for success or failure, right?
Yep.
But don't forget that solutions to problems are also within your people. If you're willing to sit down and have reasonable adult conversations with them and say, hey, we're staring down maybe some serious financial issues. Things aren't going the way that I had thought or planned. Like, who's to say that somebody on your staff doesn't have some great ideas about, like, the last thing you should be doing is getting rid of your human beings. The
Where's
first
that?
17.
Where's that bell? Where's that ding, 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 ding?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I need to get some sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's the whole point. You have two really powerful tools. You have two really powerful tools. They're on either side of your body.
Oh,
And even someone like me who's losing my hearing and has to use, stuff like this and is fighting not getting a hearing aid, but I need one.
mm,
Use listening.
right.
Use the resources of the people that you put in place to help you with the future
Yeah.
and to help you grow in the right way.
Yeah.
Because people a lot smarter than me have figured out that ROI is tremendous.
Yeah.
And they've documented it well. So
Yeah.
why are you not doing it?
Well,
Do you
don't you
feel that burn? Do you feel that?
think it's just kind of the crappy, lazy way out to some degree? Like, oh, the simplest, easiest thing to do is just go to the bottom line and just skim, because it takes work to have to try to fix things or figure it out or go back to the plan and figure out if there was a plan, by the way, what was that plan? And, take the blame game out about whose plan was it, if there was one, or who didn't plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then be like, look, we got to have some conversations. I mean, I very firmly feel that, the best ambassador, the best salespeople for your organization, whatever it is that you're doing, really, ideally, are supposed to be your own employees.
Amen to that.
Now I'm not going to sell your stuff if you're crapping all over me and treating me poorly, including not paying me well, or, not giving me good working conditions and so on. And then, if you're going to basically fire my ass because, you're looking to save a few bucks hither and yon, which is a short term, typically, fix, not a long-term fix. Am I necessarily going to say great things about that? And by the way, now that I'm out of a job, I don't have any money to put into the economy, which could also impact the bottom line of your business.
Yeah.
I know Henry Ford was a bit of an old crank, and there were certain things about the old guy that I don't find exactly admirable, but I think he was pretty much onto something, don't you think? Where he's like, you got to sell cars that are priced at a point that the people who build them can buy them. I mean, I know I'm riffing a little off something different here, but isn't that kind of the same thinking, right? Like, unemployed people don't spend money.
Yeah. I mean, if we want things to change, then we've got to be part of that change.
Yeah.
And we've come and had multiple conversations about different things that are associated with our three nuggets, but deciding where you spend your dollars and how you spend your money and what organizations you're going to support.
Yeah.
You have the power, even if you're not part of that immediate problem or solution, where you haven't been impacted by being laid off, or you're not the person laying anyone off. You still have the choice what you do to support that company and their widgets, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Make a choice to take actionable change,
right.
and be someone who shines a light on the great leaders and companies that are doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anybody in particular? Do you think there's anybody out there who is doing it right?
Oh, I think there's a lot of companies that are doing it right.
Yeah. And what
I
are
mean,
they doing that's making that difference, big or small?
well, I mean, I'll give you a good example. A company like VaynerMedia, who's huge from a standpoint of their global impact, but look at how Claude Silver and Gary Vee work together to create an engaged group of people that care and want to be there and are part of the solution, and they care about them.
Yeah.
Both of them are part of the Outliers group that you and I are part of, and they are. I mean, these are top-notch human beings that care about other human beings, and they, whether they have 1,800 employees. I mean, there are companies, there are organizations, whether they're 5 employees or they're 5,000 employees.
Yeah.
Niagara cares. They're one of our sponsors. Why do they keep winning? Why do they keep winning all of these accolades? Why does Niagara Bottling Company in California with 15 plants, want to align themselves with someone like me and what we're doing? Because they're doing great work, and they care about the community.
It pays in the long run too, right? I mean, here's the other thing that I think I wonder, do you think leaders are missing the point too? I think more than ever, especially with our younger generation workforce and our younger generation consumer market. These are people who have money, or at least mom and dad have money, and they at least can direct where that money goes. They seem to care a lot more than anybody used to care about, what are companies doing? We talk about those things around ES&G, So when we talk about environmental standards, and we talk about governance, and we talk about social justice and so on, I think, do you feel that like more people are aware of, hey, where does this company stand on how it treats its people? Do they commodify them, or do they, to your point, like Niagara and other companies that are, really putting their money where their mouth is and saying, we're not greenwashing things, or I like to use the term word washing. Let's word wash stuff. Yeah. It's better than that soap washing that your mom tried to do. Don't go there. On either end of that spectrum. Don't be the kid who needs that, and don't be the parent. That's just not cool. But word washing things like, we pay lip services stuff. I mean, how many companies sit there and say, our greatest resource is our people?
Well, so what are you doing? Yeah.
Are you behaving in a way that proves that point?
Yeah. So what are you doing? If that is the statement, then what are you doing to create that? And that's what matters.
Yeah.
It really, at the end of the day, is, are you retaining people because they love to be there? They love to work there. They feel like they have a growth plan, that they feel safe to fail forward, that they feel safe to express ideas and to share and grow and be part of a diverse community that cares about each other and is looking for ways to expand and grow, not only just within themselves personally and from a mental health standpoint. We talk about that a lot these days, but beyond that, how are we helping our community, and how are we helping the families and the communities that they are a part of?
And so much of that spin-off that you're talking about, like, what's the impact to the communities when we have layoffs, and especially when layoffs aren't like the last resort? I mean, I don't know, call me crazy, like a fox, but I'm like, hey, has it ever occurred to anybody, for example, to say, if we're really tight on the finances at this point in the game, would people be willing to temporarily, and this is the key, by the way, because I know, this didn't exactly go over well recently with some of the auto industry workers. If you're going to say it's a temporary measure, make sure that it really is. But would you temporarily be willing to step back a few hours or step back a bit of pay if it means that you don't lose 100% of your job, You know, getting a partial paycheck might be better than getting zero paycheck. But again, talking to your people and thinking about, you know, because the minute you pull that money out of the community and you pull that business opportunity out of the community, it's like that ripple effect is crazy.
I think it needs to be from top down. So when you're at a place where there have been missteps and you see that there are struggles ahead, and you've done all the right things, you're engaged with your people, you have really high retention, you've been talking about it,
Well,
but
and
things
that's a big assumption right there.
yeah, I mean, we're just
Yeah.
gonna go out there and say that, you know, you eat jalapeno peppers on a daily basis and habanero peppers like they are candy bars.
Yep.
You are just spicy. You're all in it. You
Yep.
know it. You love it. And people love you and they want to be where you are. Great. Now you got to that point where, okay, now we've done all of these things. I don't see any other way other than X, laying off people or taking away money. The very first step really should be internal. Like, all right, so I've got 10 people that are at the top echelon of the company, the executive group. What are we willing to give up? What are we going to sacrifice?
What's your bonus? Look at all these companies where people get paid bonuses for knocking people off the books.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this earlier too. And you know, there's so many rabbit holes. I know, Chason, you and I could go down. But you know, what was the latest figure this year in terms of what was it? 3 on average? The average. Now these are larger companies, by the way. But let's be clear. We're talking some bigger corporate companies. What is it? Something like the average CEO is earning 300 times what the average worker at their company is.
Yeah.
Was it? Am I right? It's something like that. It's crazy. I don't know. Maybe we start there. You know, when the CEO is earning 29 million a year, I don't know. Could you maybe take a bit of a pay cut?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. We're not talking about that you have it that you as an executive leader are not worth what you make, or that you shouldn't go back to making that in different times.
Right.
We're talking about the fact that when we get to a place where human life, where human beings are affected, that you start looking internally and from the top down.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge impact. Imagine if you're the head of a company and things are going well, everything's been great, all of the stuff that we talked about before, and now you're at this part, and you do that as a company to, you know, to put more money and funnel and hold things together and keep people going. Imagine if you do that, what the rest of your team is going to think and is going to do for you in the long run. How differently they're going to feel about the company. Oh, wow. Instead of laying us off, these guys all took pay cuts. They all made a difference. They're all sacrificing. And we're all talking about how we move forward.
Right.
How do we move forward?
Yeah. And I think that touches on something that you mentioned a few minutes ago too, around engagement. And we're also in an engagement crisis in this economy. Engagement globally, not just here in America, where you and I are sitting, but, you know, as a global phenomenon, the research is alarming. Like maybe 1 in 3, I think it's a little less than 1 in 3 workers are actually considered engaged at work. And by engagement, what we mean by that, just to clarify for anybody out there who's wondering, you know, we'll define that. Okay, engagement means like I actually want to step up and do something. Right. And like not necessarily just the minimum. Like I actually want to get my ass out of bed in the morning and I want to come to work and I want to do a good job and play nicely with people and you know, have a good day in my capacity at your company. Right?
Yeah.
That's an engaged worker. We can't get 2 out of 3 people in this economy to step into that mode. Now, what does it mean for people to see their, how engaged is leadership, and engaged with what? Are the leaders engaged with the people? Are the leaders engaged with leveraging their people, especially if we're facing down something like, oh my God, mission critical layoffs first of all, have you engaged with anybody to discuss with them, like, how the hell did we get there?
Yeah.
How did we get to the point that we're even thinking that we're not going to have everybody on payroll?
Yeah, this didn't happen overnight.
No.
This is, 99% of the time, this is some overnight phenomenon.
No.
You were banking everything on one account. The one account said, no, thank you. There's a bigger problem that happened long before you got to that place.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We just had
where are
Black
you at?
Friday here in America, but if you're pinning all your hopes on Black Friday happening and that's the only thing that's going to pull you through, we're in trouble.
Yeah. That should be the bonus.
Yeah.
My days, culinary world really is a food retail. So culinary world and the retail part of the service industry, that last quarter shouldn't have been, and I always taught this, and this is what I really believe, that should be the gravy. That should be all the things that we're going to talk about for bonuses and stuff like that, because
Right.
we just crushed that to throw us that much further over the top.
Right.
But everything else in the first 3 quarters is where we got to the place where, all right, we're doing well.
Yeah.
Now this is this. But third quarter is huge for spending for people. It's still, even in this economy,
Yeah.
when the numbers all come out, you'll still see people that really didn't have money that are like probably leveraging themselves because they don't want their kids to have a poor Christmas, or they don't want to show. And it's horrible. We've made that I don't want to go back. I don't want to go. We're going to go to like Nugget 7 over here, and I don't want to do that. But
we're going to have to do a side prize or something to get all this covered for sure. Yeah. There's a lot of complicated moving parts here. There's no doubt about it. But again, it's just like, if your model is, to your point, if your model is like, we're banking on 1 month out of the year to get us through, we should be thinking about, what about the other 11 months?
Yeah, what did we do for the rest
Are we engaging our people? Are we leveraging? Because, engagement is also very much tied to productivity.
Yep.
And so if 2/3 of your workforce aren't really engaged, that also means they're not really being as productive as they could be. And there's a whole, there's a bazillion other episodes we're going to have to do to unpack all the reasoning behind that. But we've touched, again, you've mentioned a few very key things. What's the mental health status going on here? What are you paying me enough to do this dirty job, or whatever it is? There's all kinds of criteria, but it all comes down to the leaders. Back to, nugget number 1, and the whole thing, like, look, leaders need to be thinking and planning. And part of that process should be, what's your best case scenario? And what's your not so best case scenario? And what's your contingency plan that isn't going to mean that, because it's, this, and I know this, and I if our listeners and viewers aren't catching on to this, you're going to find out fast. It's freaking expensive to replace people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I cannot emphasize enough the lunacy of what it takes. Now, I'm not saying, look, if you have somebody on your staff who actually truly does suck, and you've done everything that you can to make them okay, and they're just a lousy fit for whatever reason, that's a hiring issue, but that's another episode too. But if you've done everything else and they're still terrible, okay, that's one thing. But it's like, there's so much else going on here that you need to be thinking about and processing in there. But it starts with the leaders. Like, what decisions are you making? What are you doing? And how is that impacting somebody's ability to get the job done, which is going to hit your bottom line?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there's so many studies that are already out that have, it's like, okay, how much more do we have to put out to show that taking care of people and retaining them is much better than what you're doing? So
what's the adage? I would like to think in the business world, here's the model that a lot of us talk about all the time. Is it easier and better to keep a customer or go convince somebody to become a customer?
Yeah.
Right? I think most of us would agree, and probably, any business course out there would tell you that it is far easier and cheaper to keep a customer happy and keep the customer than having to do all the work that it takes to convince somebody to become your customer.
Yep.
Why does that make perfect sense? But then when it comes to employees, that logic seems to go out the window. It's way cheaper and easier and better to find 50 ways to Sunday to keep your staff, who are, what did we say earlier? Your best
People.
ambassadors, your best.
Their best, yeah. Your best, they are human beings, make up what you do on a daily basis.
They are your company. Your company
Yeah.
won't exist if your people, that's what a strike is all about, dare I say. If people don't show up for work, there's no work. Doesn't happen. Yeah. And, what's incentivizing people to get engaged and want to show up? And, and by the way, even the fear, the likelihood, the possibility, the inkling. I've run out of words on that list, but whatever. Because here's the other mental bandwidth suck. If I'm even so much as thinking that things are unstable or my job is in jeopardy, or I don't know if there's, I'm hearing about layoffs, are we going to be next?
What does that do to your mindset, to your mental health, to
your engagement,
your ability, your engagement, your ability to be productive?
We call it presenteeism. My body's in the building, but I ain't really here, right? That all that energy slides off sideways. So even, being that leader who plans, being that leader who thinks about it, has contingencies, uses their people in the best way imaginable to their best advantage, and also communicate clearly with people. Like if things are starting to look tough, start talking about that and start, again, engaging people in what are we going to do about it? As opposed to the whammo, I got T-boned at the intersection at the last second and I had no idea this was coming. And it's a shock. These things should never happen in a way that they are a surprise to anybody. Nobody should ever be fired without knowing why that was coming from miles away. Nobody should be laid off. I mean, if it absolutely had to come down to layoffs, that should never come as a surprise to anybody.
No, and it should never be an email that you got that the morning of, don't show up to work.
Yeah.
That's,
by the way, you don't have a job anymore. Don't bother coming in here. Thanks for your service. Yeah. 100%. Oh man, Chason, we are going to have many more conversations. Why? Well, because there's so many elements to unpack here. These are, and that's what I love about having you join me in a conversation like this. And we need to keep filtering down those layers, because nothing we talked about today happens in a vacuum. Nothing that really goes on in this world happens in a vacuum unless you happen to actually be using your vacuum because you're cleaning something. That's the only time it happens in a vacuum, or you're a research scientist using some sort of vacuum chamber. Outside of that, these things are not accidental. These things don't happen in isolation. And I think the more we can help our viewers and listeners understand and, thread together that tapestry of how these things come together, hopefully the better off everybody's going to be in the business world. I'd like to.
Yeah, right? Let's learn, let's unlearn, let's grow.
I love that. Let's unlearn. Yeah, definitely. Well, awesome. I am so glad you joined me today here on Nuggets with Sauce. Thanks everybody else for tuning in. I am your host, Michelle Arentz, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe so you get notified with new episodes as they come out. In the meantime, focus on setting yourself up for success and others too.